Hello, this is Tony Hiller from Visitech.AI. We've built a very powerful solution for visualizing and analyzing small to medium-sized datasets. In order to explain it, I'm going to jump right into some use cases. This is what the app looks like for subscribers. There's a lot of different ways you can use this to analyze data. And it is designed to work with most types of data which people are interested in. One way you can load data is to copy it from a spreadsheet and paste it into the app. I'm going to select a couple of columns from a Google Sheet. Now I'm going to copy them. Next, I'm going back to the Visitech webpage. And I'm going to press Ctrl-V to paste the data. The app instantly generated a graph of the spreadsheet data. I like a dark background, so I'm going to click on the theme button. Now I'm going to show you some unique features of the app. I'm going to show you how you can manipulate the graph to view your area of interest. First, I'm going to left-click on the mouse and drag the graph around. Next, I'm going to zoom using the scroll wheel. If I want to zoom horizontally, I press the H key on the keyboard and then I turn the scroll wheel, and I can zoom in and out horizontally. If I want to zoom vertically, I press the V key on the keyboard for vertical, and I turn the scroll wheel. It'll zoom around wherever the point is where I've got the mouse centered. Let's reset the zoom by pressing this button. If I want to zoom in very quickly on a region of interest, I right-click and drag with the mouse. That creates a rectangle. When I release the right mouse button, it zoomed in on the area I selected. Now let's look at some more meaningful data from the United States Treasury Department. This is the government webpage where you can monitor the United States national debt. I'm going to click this Download CSV file to get the data. Now let's go back to the Visitech tab and drag the data which we just downloaded into the window. If I hover over the label, that series will get highlighted. This is total public debt outstanding. The other two are intergovernmental holdings and debt held by the public. I'm not interested in the top two, so I'm going to get rid of them by pressing these X's. Let's make the graph background dark by pressing on the theme button. One region which stands out is the year 2020, when the national debt rose very quickly. This was, of course, during the COVID pandemic. If we hover over a data point, we can see what the debt was at that time. Let's put a title on the graph by clicking here, U.S. National Debt. We can zoom in on the graph just like we did before to view periods of interest. Let's reset the zoom and then do a mathematical experiment. I want to see how much the national debt increased each year, so I'm going to select this operation, Graph by Year. Now we have a graph from January 1st to December 31st of each year since 1993. We can see the very rapid rise in the national debt during the year 2020. And there was another rapid rise during the second half of last year. There was a sharp rise during 2023 as well. You can see the sharp rise during the banking crisis of 2008 at this point. In 2026, the national debt is rapidly approaching $39 trillion. Now let's look at some other ways to use this tool. I've preloaded some datasets which are very instructive for learning how to use Visitech. You can access these datasets by clicking on the Datasets button up here. Let's do some fundamental business analysis by clicking on Business, Sales, Sample Sales Data. This brought up a Google map showing the location of all 900 sales in the database. We can expand the map by dragging the slider to the left. Now we can start doing some serious analysis by looking at these generated questions down here. Let's find out who our best customers are by clicking on Margin per Customer and then sending the query. Now we have a graph on the left showing our best customers ranked from top to bottom. Next, let's do margin per state. We can see that Texas is our best state for total margin. Next, let's try percent margin per state. Now we can see that New Mexico is the best state for percent margin at 56%. Let's scroll down to look at some more suggested questions. Margin per city. El Paso, Texas is the winner in this category. How about sales per city? El Paso, Texas is also the winner for total sales. Let's try sales per customer. Isabella Wright is our best customer with more than $300,000 in sales. Let's scroll down some more and look at some more suggested questions. Customers per state. Our states with the most customers are Texas, California, and Virginia. Customers per city. Baltimore and Atlanta both have 2 customers. Margin per product line. IT infrastructure has the highest margins, followed by office furniture. Let's look at profit margin per day. Now we have a graph of the profit margin for each day during the year 2025. This data is a little bit difficult to interpret, so I'm going to click on this, mean 30, to get the 30-day mean. This will be easier to look at if I get rid of the daily values by clicking on this X and then hitting the Reset Zoom button. We can see that the highest profit margins occurred during August and the lowest occurred during July. Next, let's try percent margin per day of week. Saturday has the highest margins and Wednesday has the lowest. Profit margin per month per product line in separate columns. We can see that office furniture consistently has the highest profit margin, followed by computers. How does the store cost compare to the sale price for different products? This graph is a little bit hard to understand, so I'm going to change the type of chart from a column chart to a stacked column chart. Now we can see more clearly how store cost compares to the sale price for all the different products. Let's try a different type of data and look at the most recent crime data from Washington, D.C. Police Department. D.C. Crime 2026. Now we have a map of all of the crimes committed in Washington, D.C. so far this year, which the police know about. We can zoom in on this map to look at a particular crime of interest. If I left-click on the dot, it will bring up a police description of the crime. This crime was a motor vehicle theft. I'm going to X out this description and drag the dot to the middle of the map. Now I'm going to middle-click over the dot to see exactly where the crime occurred. Using Google Street View, we can pan around to look at the neighborhood. Now let's do some analysis. Count the number of crimes reported each day. We can see that the worst day for crimes in Washington, D.C. this year was January 14th, when they had 78 reported crimes. Now let's look at violent crimes per week. The worst week this year for violent crimes in Washington, D.C. was the week of January 19th, when there were 39 crimes reported. Let's find out the worst precincts for crime. Count the number of crimes per precinct. We can see that the worst precinct for crime this year in Washington, D.C. is Precinct 129. Let's take a closer look at Precinct 129. I'm going to click on this Table tab. Now we're looking at the data which the City of Washington provided in their data set. I'm going to scroll over to the Precinct column. The Precinct column is here, so let's find Precinct 129, which was the worst one. When I clicked on that, it wrote Voting Precinct, Precinct 129 down here. I also could have just typed precinct 129 down here, but I wanted to show you how the table works. Next, let's hit the send button to see all the crimes which occurred in precinct 129. Now we have dots for all of those crimes, and we can see that the 53 crimes there occurred just east of the White House. Let's count the number of robberies per precinct. We can see that there were 3 robberies in precinct 114, 72, 115, and a few others. I typed in down here robberies in precinct 114, 72, and 115. Most of the robberies are occurring in southeastern Washington. Now let's switch to a different type of data, Arctic sea ice. Now we have a graph of Arctic sea ice extent every single day since the year 1979, and you can see that there's 17,112 data points there. You can see that Arctic sea ice declined from about 1979 to 2007, but has been relatively stable over the past 19 years. Let's make the background dark and do the operation graph by year. Now we have a graph of Arctic sea ice extent from January 1st to December 31st for each year since 1979. The next thing we're going to do is to make an animation to show the decline of Arctic sea ice after 1979. If I hover over average 1979, it highlights that year. Now I'm going to use the down arrow key on the keyboard to step through subsequent years. And you're going to see the red line progress through 1980, 1981, 1982, etc. I'm pressing the down arrow key now, and you're going to see the line move. Now let's use the up arrow key to animate in reverse. Next, let's find the average sea ice extent for each day of the year. I'm going to select from the Operation tab, Daily Average. Now the red line shows the average sea ice extent on each day of the year. If I want to highlight the peak year, what I do is click on this line. You see that was 1979. Now let's look at the lowest year down here. You can see that the lowest sea ice extent occurred during September of the year 2012. Now we're going to look at a different type of data. I'm selecting from Data Sets, Energy, Alternative Fuels. It's a very large data set and takes about a minute to load, but this is what it looks like after the data makes it to the computer. We have a map of more than 100,000 alternative fuel stations in the United States and Canada. Using the scroll wheel on the mouse, I'm going to zoom in on an area of interest, which right now is North Dakota. Let's say I want to find all of the Tesla charging stations in Minnesota. Let's try issuing a voice command by clicking on the microphone. Tesla charging stations in Minnesota. Let's say I'm driving across southern Minnesota and want to take a look at this one. I'm going to zoom in a little bit further, and we can see that there's actually a couple of stations there. This one is at Walgreens, and I'm going to use a Google Street View to take a closer look. You can get to Google Street View by clicking the middle or right buttons on the mouse. And now you can see that Tesla charger in Worthington, Minnesota. Let's get out of Street View and find out the details about that charger. Now I'm going to click with the left button of the mouse to find out the details. You can find the exact address of the charger, the station phone number, and their hours of operation. Let's try issuing a voice command. Count the number of EV charging stations per state. Now we have a graph on the left showing that there's more than 18,000 EV charging stations in the state of California. Now let's try a few of the suggested questions. What is the breakdown of fuel stations by fuel type code? The most common fuel type is electricity, followed by E85. Which 10 cities have the highest number of alternative fuel stations? We can see that Los Angeles has the most, followed by Montreal, San Diego, and Toronto. Let's try a few other questions. What are the most common EV networks present in the table? The ChargePoint network is the most common one by far. List the names and addresses of all stations located in Fort Smith, Arkansas. This didn't generate a graph, but what it gave us over here is a listing which we asked for. Let's go back over to the Table tab and make up our own query. I want to find all the alternative fuel stations located in convenience stores in Ohio. We can see on the map that there's 255 of them. Let's say I'm driving on Interstate 70 west of Columbus, Ohio, and need to find an alternative fuel station. We can see there's one at the Pilot Fuel Center, so let's take a closer look at that. We can get the station information by left-clicking with the mouse. We've got the address, the phone number, and the hours of operation. Let's take a closer look at this using Street View. I'm going to middle-click with the mouse. Now we can see exactly where that alternative fuel station is located. We can also generate suggested questions by clicking on this button. Let's try, what are the most frequent facility types for these fuel stations? The most common locations are convenience stores, hotels, and gas stations. You can try asking pretty much anything you want. If your question is structured well and the data is available in the database, there's a high probability that your question will be answered correctly. Let's try a different type of problem now. I want to look at temperatures in Indiana. Now we have a map of all 36 United States Historical Climatology Network stations in Indiana. I want to take a look at temperatures in Bloomington, Indiana, so I zoomed in and I'm going to click on it. Now we have a graph of all 45,939 daily maximum temperatures recorded at Bloomington since the 19th century. I prefer a dark background, so I'm going to click on Theme. Now let's get some suggested questions. Let's find the average temperature per month. The average temperature in Bloomington during February is 42 degrees. And during July, it's 87 degrees. Let's try this one now to calculate the percent probability of being over several different temperatures. Now we can see for each day of the year the likelihood of being over 90 degrees, over 80 degrees, over 70 degrees, and over 60 degrees. Next, let's count the number of days over 90 degrees Fahrenheit per year. You can see that prior to 1960, Bloomington had a lot more days over 90 degrees Fahrenheit, with the peak year being 1913 when they had 70 days over 90 degrees. Last year, Bloomington only had 8 days over 90 degrees. In this introductory video, I've just barely scratched the capabilities of our tool. I'm going to be making a lot more videos soon showing how to analyze data for different use cases. Before I end this video, I'm going to show you two more things. The first one is our ability to do custom applications, and the other is I'm going to show you how to subscribe to Visitech.AI. The custom application I'm going to show you analyzes New Mexico oil and gas. It takes a few minutes for the dataset to load because it's very large. But now we're looking at more than 138,000 oil and gas wells in New Mexico. Let's say I just want to look at the ones which were active during January 2025. Now I want to filter it down to the 100 most productive wells. Most of them are located down here in the Permian Basin, so let's zoom in on that area. I zoom using the scroll wheel and pan by left-clicking and dragging. I want to look at this group of wells down here, so I'm going to right-click and drag a rectangle around it. Let's zoom in a little bit further by right-clicking and dragging. Now I'm going to analyze this very productive well by double-clicking on it. We can see exactly where the well is located on the Google map, and in the graph down here we can see the gas production and oil production over time at that well. This application is full of advanced features, but I'm just going to show you a couple more. First thing I'm going to do is reset the zoom. Next, I'm going to clear the top well search. Now I'm going to change the map type to a heat map. The most productive wells are in red and the least productive are in blue. If I hover over a well, we get the details about the well and who owns it. I'm going to change the map type again to a depth map. Now we can see the depth of the wells at all these locations. The red wells are the deepest. This one is at more than 13,000 feet. And the blue wells are shallower. This one's only 888 feet. The reason I'm showing you this is because we can build a custom application for your business integrating graphs and maps. The last thing I'm going to show you is how to sign up for Visitech. This is what you're going to see the first time you go to app.visitech.ai. Click on Sign Up. Enter a valid email address and a password and click Sign Up. This will bring you to the non-subscriber interface, which has limited functionality. You can analyze temperature data, but that's it for the non-subscriber version. In order to use the full features of the app, click on Subscribe Now. You can read through all the details, and if you want the full features of the app, click on Become a Founding Member. This will bring up the standard secure Google Stripe checkout page. You get 14 days free and you can easily cancel at any time. After you go through that process, you'll have access to the full features of the app. And you can unsubscribe very easily by just clicking on this and clicking on the unsubscribe button. Then just confirm that you want to unsubscribe. If you do unsubscribe, your subscription will remain active until the 2-week trial period is over or until your last payment period has expired. In this video, I just barely scratched the surface of the capabilities of this tool, and I will be making a lot more videos showing you more features and more details. Please give us a try at Visitech.ai or app.visitech.ai. I think you'll find our tool extremely useful. We make data analysis and visualization very simple at Visitech.ai.